Oh, we're back again. We're back again with the coffee. By the way, I don't know if I've shown this mug. It's not a mug, it's a cup. Yes, dear. Of course, it's flipped around on your screen. No, dear. Hilarious, right? Okay. We'll get into the video. Day 2 of the Pro League, Week 1, Division A was a very interesting one. I think some expected results, some not so expected results, some great games. Honestly, I think we've seen a lot of good games today. Oh, well, last night I just actually caught the reciprocity LG game this morning because I fell asleep. I'm sorry, my fiance, she goes to sleep at a normal time. She's got a normal job, not like me sitting at home recording videos for you guys, but she goes to bed at a decent time. I can't stay up till like 2 a.m. If I stay in here, it's just my sleeping pattern's not adjusted yet. But we caught the majority of the games, and then I watched Rec in LG this morning. But what a bunch of great games, honestly. Let's get into it. Kicked off with Red against Genji. Now, this one has been 3-1 nearly every single time, with Red always taking map number 1, and then Genji just basically coming back into it. I think Genji have got Red's number just because the searches are so difficult for Red to get. We know Red's Search and Destroy is not quite at its best yet, and we know that they have worked on it. But it seems as if Genji's unpredictability is something that's causing problems for Red, who play a very standard Search and Destroy game. Another thing we will note on this one, Joe played really well. And he tweeted out back to me when I said he played well, you know, I'm still getting a lot of slack. And I think it's disgraceful that he's getting so much slack. Still getting slack, because I don't like in terms of KD, etc., he's never been the biggest slaying guy, but I mean, he's nearly put number 1 for this team. He's doing a lot more than he did in previous games, slaying-wise. And yes, okay, you can bring 5v5 into that, but I think he's looking really nice for this Red team, but irrelevant. I think Scraps had a pretty quiet game, but you can't really rely on him too much. Honestly, in this series, one of the points I made on Twitter was that... Twitter? Sound like Brycey. Twitter. Was the fact that I think Control was the swing. I always thought Genji would win the searches, which is why if it went to a 5th map, I always had it down as Genji. My prediction was 3-1 to Red because I thought that they were going to win the hardpoint. They did. I thought they would lose the Search and Destroy. They did. I did think they would win the Control, which I think would have spurred them on to win the hardpoint. But as soon as they lost that Control, I think they sort of knew that if this is automatically going to a last map, even if we win the hardpoint, it's going to be difficult. And I think in that mindset, that can sometimes happen with teams. And I think that's the way it went, unfortunately, for them. But yeah, all props to Genji. They played really well as well. Havoc was fantastic for that team. Major Maniac is a small guy, but he has a lot of Call of Duty talent. He's going to be one of the stars of this year, I feel. Very, very good player. But him and Havoc were the standouts for me for Genji. And they got a 3-1 win over Red. Now, let's talk about Midnight, because they might be the real deal. They might be. Yes, okay, they beat Optic last night, the previous night, sorry, in convincing fashion. Of course, Zuma's in there as the sub, so we're going to talk about that in a second as well. But going up against EG, a couple of people on Twitter were like, you know, it's not really the real test, but EG looked really good at the PLQ, and I think it's a really, really nice win for them. A 3-0 as well. That's a convincing way. It's not, I thought this would be closer. I thought Midnight would take it maybe 3-2, or EG can maybe take last map. I thought that EG would offer a good challenge, but Midnight really rolled over them, and that is what's so prominent for me. It's not the fact that they beat them. If they beat them, you would say, okay, fair enough, 3-2, that would have been like what I expected, but Midnight 3-0ing EG. I honestly think the consistency is scary for a lot of teams. It's getting to the point now where a lot of people are going to look at them and sort of say, right, okay, they are the real deal. I want to see them go up against your Optics with Dashi. I want to see them go up against LG. I want to see them go up against... I'm really interested to see them play against Red, because for me, Red are a team who could go toe-to-toe with them in the respawn. But we'll see. We'll see. I think, you know... One stat to point out, and JP tweeted this out, thank you to JP for this. Midnight are 8-0 in Control on LAN. That's stemming from the PLQ. None of their opponents have even taken a round to get them to round 5. They've never went to round 5 in Control, and they've outscored their opponents round-wise 24-4 with an 86% round win. That is as convincing of a Control game you'll ever see. Now, they're really, really good on Arsenal. Red are really, really good on Arsenal. So I'm super excited to see that game tonight between these two. Midnight against Red, I do believe, is on tonight, either tonight or tomorrow, one of the two. But that'll be a really interesting one. But realistically, they really remind me of United when they came on their come up. You know, when we seen Gunless and Arcides, these guys starting to really cause problems for teams. They remind me of them, and I think they could be one of these 5 guys could be 5 of the new breed of Call of Duty players that are coming up. For me, the guys that stand out from, I mean, you would say from a pure KD standpoint, of course, but just from their play in general, is Envoy and Brack. They look fantastic, and Midnight really are the team to beat in this division right now, and I'm really interested to see how they go up. Again, I want to see them play Optic with Dashi. I want to see them play LG. I want to see them play Red. I would love to see them play Splice, United, those sort of teams as well. So let's see when teams start getting bedded into this league, if they can consistently do this. I'm going to speak about a point which I think is prevalent as well towards the end of this video on as to why PLQ teams seem to be doing really, really well right now. It's not necessarily anything to do with that start of beating EG, but I think there's a factor in this. But we'll talk about OG against UYU. OG struggles continuing a little bit. They did eventually get the win. I think for me is that they'll absolutely get better. And for me, to see some of the chat blaming Zuma for these poor performances, it's fucking crazy. Get your head around it. Come on, he's had to slot into this team. Honestly, he hasn't played great for FaZe through the whole season so far. Obviously, FaZe not making it to Pro League. But realistically, you need to take a step back and realize the situation he's had to be put in. It's a very, very difficult spot for Zuma to have to just jump into this squad and go to the role that they need him to in a team that's never really played together. But they will get better. I think they just need to be able to chalk up a bad week having to use Zuma, of course. And again, that's nothing against Zuma, but this team's inevitably going to be better with the 5th they practiced with for 4 months. I mean, it's just a case. And then that 5th being the MVP from Vegas is obviously a factor as well. I mean, I think OG, you know, if they can get a couple of wins under their belt through this week with a different roster, they'll be relatively happy. Obviously, they would prefer to be flawless and have Dashi in the team, but you have to look at the situation they're in. And I think, you know, a 3-2 win against UYU. UYU didn't look bad, and I think Methods played pretty decent, but there's going to be a lot of question marks around that team as well, for obviously dropping Spoof for Methods. But we will see. We will see. I think it's a hard game to read into, but OG will get better as the week goes on with Zuma, absolutely no doubt. Now, Rec against LG, the standout game of the night. What a game, by the way. Backwards and forwards. I only watched it this morning, but the hard points were insane. 100-point comebacks on either side of things. Rec with a 100-point comeback in the first map, then LG with the 100-point comeback on map number 4. I think if you're a Reciprocity fan, your only complaint here is that it should have been 3-0. I think, you know, if they close out the control, then, I mean, they're all good, obviously, but they really should have closed out the control. They were 2-0 up. They were cruising. By the way, Wuskin is a beast. I think we're all living in the Marshall Twins world right now. These two guys are absolutely insane at this moment in time, and Rec looking good for it. I think Tommy had a really good series as well, and one thing I want to point out for Reciprocity fans as well, Den seems to be using the Maddox a lot more, which seems to suit him a little bit better. We've seen Wuskin tweet out to say that they had made some changes, and it seemed to benefit them, you know. LG, for me, though, made a lot of mistakes. I think the guys on the desk really highlighted that they really did get 2 maps on pure talent. And it's not good enough. They need to be winning these maps from a teamwork perspective. You look at this team and you say to yourselves, these should be top 4 every single time. They typically shouldn't be losing the Reciprocity, but fair play to Rec. They played really, really well. A couple of adjustments and the team seemed to have worked. Should have been 3-0, but LG specialists as well. I mean, Slacked, I don't want to harp on it too much, but I think it's one of those things where you continue to have bad Grav Slam plays, and then it sort of just stems out of control because you're trying so desperately to make the right play, and then you panic, and it's difficult. I feel bad for him because he is a good player, but he didn't have a good series in the chat. We're after him, really, really were. Gunless, I thought, was pretty decent, but I thought his Tempest play wasn't great, and I'd like to see more from him with the Tempest. We could see them be more effective all around. Formal had a good game, and that's a good sign for LG, but realistically, props to Rec. They play fantastically, seem to be getting better, much better than they were against Red the other night as well. Wuskins, Dance, Tommy all having a fantastic series. Ed was really good as well. All round good game from them. Shawnee had these moments, so good stuff from Rec. Only complaint, could have been 3-0. So basically, one thing I want to chat about towards the end of this video, and we'll see if that is the case towards the end of the week, is that teams who played at the PLQ really seem to have these top 4 teams number. I mean, we're talking really the only thing you can look into is the LG thing. I would say Optic, you can't really talk about too much. I do believe that they would have had close games with Midnight, and I do believe that they would have had close games with the UIU. I think one thing that is potentially a factor is the fact that the teams and the players, of course, at the PLQ have had a lot more recent LAN experience. Now, I think it makes sense. Like, I mean, you talk about practice. When I was thinking about it this morning, I thought about like Conor McGregor in the UFC. You know, this guy, yes, he's been training for the 2-year layoff that he had or something like that, but it's not the same as being in the ring. It's not the same as being in an actual fight, which is what LAN is. It's an actual, fully fair on-LAN environment fight against each other. And they haven't had that practice for 4 months, whereas these teams who qualified at PLQ had that like 3 weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago. And they had a lot of it as well, remember. That's like 5 days of LAN practice with your team. Here he is. 5 days of LAN practice with your team, which is just... I think it's a big, big factor in the fact of how well these teams have been doing. But guys, let me know what you think of these results last night. Tonight's games are going to be insane as well. Leave your thoughts in the comments about the results. Are OG getting better? Red struggling against Genji. Do we think Genji are really a top 3 team in this group? Potentially. Midnight, can they get better? Does anybody topple them at all? I really don't know. And then you look at Rec. Are they going to excel after their poor performance against Red? After they beat LG, looking really good. Do LG need to make some changes in terms of specialists? Potentially, let me know your thoughts, and we'll keep an eye on the games tonight. We'll see you for another video tomorrow, guys. See you then.